One thing you can rely on a templating system for is the ability to render repeating items or lists, and Markup templating system is no exception. Let's say I have an UL tag, and inside I want to render 10 list items. I could simply use the array_from method with the object length as value, and for each item render a number li tag. This renders just fine because Markup handles arrays in the template as a way to render lists by default. I'll refactor this to first create a list on numbers and use array map to render the items. Just look at how complex this looks still. There is a better way, and I'll show you in a bit, but first, let me move this to be a state. I'll also perform an effect just so you can see the list update in the DOM. Now I'll set a set interval for every 2 seconds where I'll create a random index from 0 to 10. Then I'll update the list targeting that index and again generate a random value for it. Now we see the list and you can see a random item in the DOM gets updated. But I want you to pay attention at the elements. Look how all of them are flashing. This is because the entire list gets re-rendered. This is not because I'm spreading the prev here. I could just return it, and you can see the effect is the same. So what's happening is that every time the number list changes, we are creating a whole new list with map where each item is a brand new HTML template instance. Markup will look at all the items and see that they are new instances and therefore update the DOM again even when nothing has changed. Here the data is the template items, not the array of numbers. The problem is now obvious. This is a small list, but if you have to update an entire list in the DOM all the time, you will have performance issues. To improve this, I'll introduce you to the helper called repeat. For this, I'll just provide the number as first argument and a function that will get called for each item to create the item templates. Now this looks much better. But what this is doing now is creating and managing a rendered list, but now it is tracking the data and not the templates. Let me show you what I mean. If we look at the browser, you will see that 1, not all the items are being updated at a time. 2, the list seems to shrink and you can see a few items being updated sometimes. What is going on? Remember that the list contains numbers? And like I said, this is tracking data, in this case, the numbers. And because it is randomly generated, numbers may repeat in the list. Let me go ahead and log the list after I make the changes so you can see. Let's let it run a little bit. Let me grab this one here. And you can see that the number 1 is repeated in few places. So the way it renders is it grabs the number 4 here and checks the cache to see if anything was created. If not, it will call the function we provided to the repeat helper and create the item template. It continues to do this for all the items. Once it grabs the first repeating one in the list, it creates a template for it. But when it finds a second and the third ones, it does not call the functions. It uses what is cached. Markup is rendering all the 10 items in the array. What is doing the shrinking is the DOM itself. This is because node element can only exist one place in the DOM at a time. Since the array positions 5, 6, and 7 contain the same nodes, it only renders once. If later a position gets updated with a different value, the repeat helper will unmount the node for that position and create a new one by calling the function. The way we can fix this is by avoiding having repeated data in the list, especially when the data is a primitive data type. Instead, I'll create an object for every item in the array with the value property. If I go back to the browser, we can see that now only the item that changed is updated in the DOM. But pay attention at how I'm making the change. I'm creating a new object for every update, not just updating the value property. This is because markup does a shallow comparison, just changing the value property won't trigger a DOM update. Since we only have numbers here, with one thing that repeat helper also accepts is the count. I can say repeat this item this 10 times. The n here will be the number starting from 1, and I could also access index as second argument. And this will give me 10 items in the DOM. I can say give me 100 nodes. Let's try 10,000, and you can see it is still really fast. Let's do 10 million, and you can see now the DOM can handle this. And the effect is the same even without markup. DOM render and manipulation is slow in general. Perhaps you can try a vanilla virtual list to help you with this. And look, it finally made it. This was the repeat helper for you. Play around and explore it to really understand it. We can talk about more helpers in the next video.